Shalom. Call halal Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakaha Kudash. Double honors unto the apostles, double honors unto the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners, among the heathen that look like those heathens. This is not a black thing. And to the few Akwaf that are listening and learning, to you I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago. And once again, a shout out to all my fellow laborers, the 144,000 who do this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. And what you're looking at is just some more evidence that we're going to pour salt in the wound of white lies, of white historical lies. You know, I've told you many a times that these Edomites were not the Danes. They were not the Brits. They were not the Scots. They were not the Irish. They're not the royalty of Europe at all. They're not even really European. They just lived there. All right. They conquered Europe. They conquered, or should I say, and Europe is in Asia. So they conquered that portion of Asia, that part of Asia, the western part of Asia, from the brown-fleshed Etruscans, the sons of Japhet. The actual Japhites were melanated people, swarthy people, swarthy and tawny, which is a perfect example of what the so-called Negroes look like. All right, they are swarthy people, swarthy and tawny, swarthy from the dark chocolate to a very light-skinned brown person, like someone that they call yellow or red bone. Oh, let me turn this off. All right, just like they will refer to someone as a red bone. All right, I was called that myself as a child. All right, someone who's very light brown, yellow. Yellow is a division of a portion of brown. Is a what's the word that I'm looking for? Not division, but a derivative of brown. All right. Chocolate is very dark. I had some dark chocolate yesterday. Dark chocolate is good for you in small amounts. It's full of magnesium, which is good for your blood, which is good for your heart, which is good for your manly parts. All right. And it's very, very dark brown, but it's still brown, not black. All right. And you have to be repetitive with certain information. We've learned that because our people are hard-head, stiff-necked people. But this book, that you see on the screen, the Jacobite of Ireland, 1685 to 91, by J.G. Sims, John Gerald Sims. Well, guess what? I'm holding it in my hands. I have this book, right? The beloved brother Swarthy brought this book back from Ireland years ago and gave it to me. And, and over the year, I've done a few lessons and gone into it, all right? But I'm going to read page 40 on this book. All right. And then I'm going to play a video because I've already, we're also profiling yet again, and I've yet to really dig into it yet, is the Sephardim in the Americas and how these people with this whole, anti-Semitic lie, trying to protect who they are. They're the converts who refer to themselves as the JOOs that took over our heritage. All right, and now claiming to be us. And the evidence is that I'm going to prove that 144%. To argue with it just makes yourself look stupid and foolish and uneducated and falsely educated, because all these so-called educated people, that is exactly what they are. They've been fraudulently and falsely educated, taught nothing but lies. All right, and at the highest level, they know that they were taught lies, but yet they propagate them anyway. They push those lies anyway to make themselves feel comfortable. All right, they believe not the record. Let's get that. And the Bible itself bears record of what the Israelites, look like. And I'm going to get that. But first, let me grab this in Ecclesiasticus, or the book of Sirach. And I'm going to start at verse at verse 18. He seeketh out the deep and the heart, and considereth their crafty devices. For the Lord knoweth all that may be known, and beholdeth the signs of the world. He declareth the things that are past and for to come, and revealeth the steps of hidden things. No thought escapeth him, neither any word hideth from him. So you can't just continue to lie and cover up history and pretend it didn't happen. All right, watch that movie, the new Planet of the Apes, and it's beyond beyond a shadow of a doubt that is a play on the kingdom of Israel, on when the Negroes, so and they're making the apes. The apes are really a slap or a shot at the Judites. All right, and instead of saying Edom, they said Echo. All right. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. But you have to remember the Edomites came into power and got the portion of Asia that they call Europe, and all of Asia and North Africa, all right, and Western Asia, which they fraudulently call the Middle East. All that came into their hands through Alexander. And since then, they've been whitewashing and lying and fraudulently trying to cover up history. Let's get another record of it. This is in the book of Maccabees. Another reason why they wanted to remove the Apocrypha from the Bible, because it reveals that the Romans are Edomites, the so-called white people are Edom and not Japhet at all. All right, which is a false doctrine, which is really controlled opposition when you have Jakes teaching that. All right, they're unlearned or they've been paid off. It's one or the other. But this is our first Maccabees 3:48. And it reads, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen sought to paint the likeness of their images. So they did it with the biblical characters, and they did it with the characters that help shape and form modern day society, like Bach, Beethoven, Shakespeare. All those people were so-called black people. Those were those Palatine Boers that Ben Franklin was complaining about in his letter in 1751 about the bettering of mankind. All right, when he talked about these Palatine Boers, these swarthy, blacks, these swarthy people that were in Ireland, Scotland, Italy, Germany, Sweden. But history in schools today in the West are taught that those places were white and always have been white, and that's a lie. Those places were not so-called white until after the Renaissance. Point blank, period. Even when the Romans were ruling, you still had people of color all in those lands. All right? Until over centuries, they were breeded out and pushed out. Because all your inhabitants of Western Europe, of Western Asia, and Southwest Asia and Northwest Asia, which they call Europe, all the people, the people that left there, those are the people that you call Polynesians, Hawaiians, Samoans, etc. That was their land. The Picts, those people with all the tattoos on their skin. All right, with the brown melanated people, swarthy people. All right, when you look at the ancient relics of the Etruscans, of the Minoans, you're always going to find the men being painted melanated. And the only time, and they would use white paint to paint their women to separate the difference between male and female, because they both wear their hair long. All right, a lot of Japhetic men wear their hair long just as their women. So that they would paint the women with white paint just to show you that it was a female. But their statues and their relics showed you people of color. This is undeniable facts. Okay, so let me read about, and I've taught a lot about Cromwell. So let's go to page 40 in this book that you're looking at on the screen. And also, I've told you that when the Sephardic, Morenos, Moors, and Jews, all right, were cast out of Portugal and Spain, that they took on the name Huguenots, and the Huguenots spread all over Europe. Even some of them went to Africa, some of them went to the islands, and many of them came to Americas, and they actually were establishing the colonies in America, and the Edomite came and took it all over and sat on it as if they did. Hence the reason why they were actually able to broker deals with the natives. So a lot of history because they were the same people. All right. And once again, these Huguenots were also race traders because they did horrible things to their own people. Even as some of them owned slaves and actually participated in the slave trade of the rest of Judah and, of the house of David. But it doesn't take away the fact of who they were and who they are and all the evidence that's being presented to prove it. Okay, so once again, you white people, you keep making all these television shows glorifying all these characters, Ivar and Bjorn Ironside, Uhtred of Bevenber. Those people were not white men. Okay? Page 40, second paragraph. In February 1688, Tyrconnell suggested sending over 2 judges, Nugent and Rice, with proposals for legislation. Sunderland replied that the king approved of their coming with the drafts of such bills as were approved by at Chester. The judges took with them a letter from Tyrconnell to James saying that he was sending 2 draft bills in which all imaginable care have been taken to preserve your majesty's intentions in giving as little disturbance as is possible to the Protestant interest and to restore the Catholics to no more than what seems absolutely necessary to render them any way considerable or capable to serve your majesty here. Tyrconnell's letters show that the 2 drafts were alternative, which corroborates Sheridan's account. The French ambassador was wrongly informed that the settlement was to be replaced. The first alternative came nearer Sheridan's proposal, providing the restoration of the settlement should be reopened. So when we're reading about these settlements, we're talking about colonization of white people coming to take over places where Huguenots were Jacobites, so-called black men, real Jews, all right, Judeans were living, all right. Those whose claims of innocency had not been heard for lack of time were now to have their claim admitted for hearing. If they were adjudged innocent, they were to get back their ancestral lands by paying 3 years' purchase to Cromwellian occupiers. Cromwellian occupiers. Remember, it was Cromwell that was sending all the Jacobites to the islands, places like Montserrat, to the place where they fraudulently call the West Indies. All right. And they gave it that name to cover up the fact that they knew that they were coming to lands full of Israelites. All right, they showed you that in the movie 1692 with Gerard Gardel when he played Cristobal Colon, who the world fraudulently and falsely calls Christopher Columbus. And he spoke about Ezra's writing of the Israelites coming here to the Americas and to the islands. They knew who these people were. Hence the reason why Cristobal Colon, that you fraudulently refer to as Christopher Columbus, came to the Americas with 5 Hebrew interpreters, these Huguenots, the very ones these Jacobites that you're looking at on the screen. All right. It says, a common fund would pay another 3 years' rent to the Cromwellian, who would thus get nearly half the value of the property in compensation for eviction. Why these son of a bitches take your shit and then try to charge you rent and make you pay fines and fees to live on your own land? Nothing has changed. It's not the same. There's nothing new under the sun. All right? I am of native descent, and I have to pay rent, pay for my own trees. I buy furniture. Those are trees that in most cases was built from wood on the land which I came from. These pieces of shit. Back to the book. Those who were adjudged innocent but had been named in the act of settlement as entitled to recover their lands after Cromwellian occupants had been given their lands elsewhere were to get half of their ancestral property, the Cromwellians keeping the other half. These dirty sons. It could be argued that the scheme corresponded to Charles's intention to be fair to both sides while giving preferable treatment to innocents. So Charles, all right, being Charles II, son of King James or grandson of King James in that line. Okay? Now, let's click to the next book, which I've read this portion before. And I have so many books on my list. But this is Sephardic and the Americans, edited by Martin A. Cohen and Abraham J. Peck. All right. And Martin A. Cohen is a professor of Jewish history at the Hebrew Union College Institute of Religion. And Abram J. Peck is administrative director at the American Jewish Archive. So that means that these people, the educators in the Jewish society, know that they're converts and know that the Huguenots, that the Jacobites, the Israelites, the actual Judeans were Negroes. And there are the converts who moved to the land where Ashkenazi was from, and melanated people, started calling themselves by the name of Ashkenazi, that melanated people, and calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews. All right? The Sephardim, who identified themselves according to their prayer ritual, whose names come from the biblical designation for Spain, were the first significant group of, and it says, well, I'm going to say Judeans, immigrants to settle in the Americas. Here's your evidence. We just read it. All right? They dominated the religious, social, and economic life in American Jewry during the colonial and early federal periods, yet by the middle of the 19th century, they have become a part of America's Judean myth. They were viewed as grandees of American Jewish society and aristocrat articulated that had all but vanished. Why? Because they got labeled Negroes and blacks and African Americans. All right, as a factor in the later history of American Jewish life. In the years between 1881 and 1924, the great period of European Jewish immigration, all right, to the United States, a second and lesser known group of immigrants left the shores of Europe and Asia, which is one place, all right, to find a home in America. They spoke Judeo, Spanish, Greek, Arabic, basically Yiddish, all right, and claimed the Sephardic heritage. That's all we really need to read. Now that we've heard those evidences from certified historians, let's play a couple short videos. One of the reasons why they want to get rid of TikTok, called History Lies. And this one is History Lies number 42, I believe. Number 42 and maybe number 17. Salakia. Let's get to my saved videos. And let us show Esau to be the liar that he is. So the first one is about the Sephardic Huguenots, the Judeans, the Moors of Portugal and Spain, and the rest of Europe. Let's turn this sound up. And here we go.
Famous English poet, playwright, and actor, described himself in the early 1600s. From the autobiography of Shakespeare, a fragment, page 57 and 58, quote, "I had some good and dear and trusty friends in London, and made merry with them for nigh to a week together. There were Ben Jonson, a witty and scholarly and a merry rogue, who was very close to my heart, and John England, an honest man, and Edward England, as honest as John, but shy and pale, and Edward Sholton, he who bought my third play, and Will Shakespeare. That was I, a small, dark man with great eyes, whom the women loved not a little, but who loved them not too much, and who was not seldom called the little Jew boy, or the little Jew from the Midland counties, which made me to fume with anger, for I knew not then, as I did afterwards, that my grandfather, Thomas the Little of Utrecht in Holland had been born a Jew. In this autobiography, Shakespeare describes himself as a small, dark man. He speaks of his younger years when he was called a Jew boy, and reflects upon this filling him with rage, because he didn't know he was actually of Jewish descent, his grandfather being a Sephardic Jew from Holland, what we call today the Netherlands. We have covered in previous videos that Jews in Europe were mostly from Spain and Portugal, and were described being very dark of complexion. This time I will provide another piece of literature pointing to this fact. From the Detroit Jewish News, Friday, December 5th, 1969. Quote, fascinating. Mulatto Jew story in Marcus' new work. In 1668, Boston reported the arrival and arrest of a Jew named Solomon. He was caught in the town of Wenham, Mass, on his way to New Hampshire and Maine. His crime? He had profaned the Lord's Day by traveling on a Sunday. Who was Solomon? All we know is that he was described as a mulatto Jew. But was he actually a mulatto? The Englishmen of that day thought of the Jews as a dark-skinned people. In 1665, 3 years before Solomon was hauled before the magistrates in Wenham, a respectable Portuguese Jew on Jamaica, a landowner, was referred to as a black Jew. Tawny people were dark-skinned. Benjamin Franklin believed that most of the world was tawny, and he included in the category not only Africans, Asians, and American Indians, but also Italians, French, Russians, Swedes, and all the Germans except the Saxons. The Saxons and the English, he wrote in 1751, are the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. End quote. This newspaper makes us question our previous understanding of the word swarthy, as it says tawny people were dark-skinned.
They replace swarthy with black.
Based on this definition on this etymological dictionary published in the early 1700s, that swarthy was a word used to describe a range of melanated skin tones.
See?
Tawny and dusky,
Dark chocolate to a red bone.
Brown, while black or dark, meaning a dark brown complexion. However,
and only the Israelites come that way. The other races, the other dark races don't.
In fact, synonymous. They mean the same thing. Meaning a swarthy person is simply someone with a dark complexion. The amount of European monarchs and nobles described as swarthy is astonishing. We intend to make videos about all of them.
Franklin called them the Palatine Boers, fake royals, admitting that dark people were ruling.
Being a Jew from Holland, presents us with the perfect opportunity to continue the story of the Iberian black Jews after the exile.
The Irish,
from the Jews and Moors in Spain,
the Scots, the Brits.
Quote, many of the Portuguese Jews settled became prosperous in the Indies, in southern France, and in Hamburg. Others settled in the Netherlands and became especially prosperous in Holland. From Holland, large numbers of the descendants of the Portuguese and Spanish exiles entered England through the intercession of Manasseh ben Israel with Oliver Cromwell. We just read how William Shakespeare's grandfather, Thomas of Utrecht, was a Jew from Holland. That's why I assumed he was a Sephardic Jew, which gives more context to William Shakespeare describing himself as dark. But it still doesn't explain why he used to get angry when he was nicknamed Jew Boy. The reason being a dark-complexioned Englishman.
I have that book in my possession as well that you're looking at.
Jew simply due to complexion, because it also implied they were not Christian. The comparison doesn't make it justice because it lacks the religious component, but in our times it would be like calling a Japanese person Chinese boy, simply because they have similar phenotypes. Like and share history is a lie. How did William Shakespeare...
So he also spoke about being a Jew because of his grandfather was a Jew, proving that it's through the male, just as the Bible says, and not that the Jewish push their Judaism, which is a religion. Judaism is not the following the law, statutes, and commandments of the Bible. That's something that they made up. So the evidence is overwhelming that we presented. All right. And the true the true anti-Sims are them. All right, because they're by claiming to be, by still trying to hold up the lie, propagate this lie that they falsify, since the time of the Renaissance. Well, it really makes them the ones who are playing the anti-Semantic game. Call halal Yahweh Ba'Shem Abshai Bahasham Rakah Hakwadash Kwam Yasharala Ba Ba Ba.